It's everybody. Hi, everybody. I'm Marcia Nedland. I am one of the organizers for the National Middle Neighborhoods Community of Practice. What I was about to say is that anyone I've ever talked to who also does webinars on a regular basis says that, it's become the thing that people, and I know I do it myself, we sign up for webinars, even if we can't actually make them in person because you get the slides after. So we usually count on about half of who signs up showing up, but let's go ahead and get started. So today we are talking about updating middle neighborhood housing stock. In particular, that much is a favorite topic of ours, right? Since one of the issues that's constantly at play in middle neighborhoods is that they're not in terrible shape, but their housing stock needs updates and maybe some more serious maintenance and repairs. But this time we're talking about, in particular, around energy efficiency and climate resiliency. And as our guest speaker today is about to tell you, there's a very big reason why we're talking about that right now, besides the fact that climate is an issue. So just to remind everybody, the Middle Neighborhoods Initiative is a national one. It's kind of at this point in terms of its hosting is the joint venture of NeighborWorks America and the National Community Stabilization Trust. And we are here to mobilize attention on middle neighborhoods which tend to be overlooked by policy and philanthropy because they're neither the most distressed neighborhoods or communities, and but they're not the healthiest either. So we have this community of practice that has more than 400 practitioners, policymakers, and researchers. We try to keep everybody connected with each other through webinars, case studies, newsletters, virtual site visits. We also support research into topics that are relevant to middle neighborhoods, and particularly NCST does policy analysis and advocacy around issues that are relevant to middle neighborhoods and communication strategies. So I think that we actually had a couple of our newer steering committee members signed up for this. We'll see if they're here. Just as I said, middle neighborhoods tend really just to, the most universal description is that they are neither the most distressed neighborhoods in a community, nor are they the healthiest. As a practical matter, they tended to have mostly been built as single family homes for families with children, which is part of the reason why they're, having trouble with uneven demand, because that's a demographic that in many areas is declining. They tend to be still well more than 50% owner occupied, but we have seen that slowly eroding in some places. They're more racially, ethnically, and economically diverse than either their lower income or higher income counterparts. And this is fascinating to me because if you've worked, in anything to do with community revitalization, one of the sort of gold standards that we were all going for so long, or that we talk casually about, is a mixed income neighborhood, right? And these are our naturally occurring mixed income neighborhoods, but they're disappearing either through unchecked decline or through gentrification. Just want to call your attention to, if you ever want to play around with a map to see where your middle neighborhoods are, this is only one of many criteria people look at, but we have a mapping tool at the website that allows you to toggle different kinds of income screens on the left for metropolitan areas, and it just pops up your census tracts. There's different philosophies as to why you might want to look at 60 to 100% of city median income on the low end, all the way up to 100 to 160% of the national, so or area median income. But if you ever want to talk more about that, reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk more about it. Okay, so let's get on to our topic. It's going to be fascinating, guys. So our speaker today is Eric Hangen, who's been a longtime colleague and friend of mine. So I've been able to watch his career and be a beneficiary of his sort of groundbreaking thinking and work on so many topics that have to do with community development. Probably many of you already know him. He's the CEO of I Squared Community Development. He's also a senior research fellow and faculty at University of New Hampshire, where he works in the policy area. And he's faculty at NAWORK's Training Institute. And in fact, he just rolled out a new two-day course at the recent NAWORK's Training Institute in Chicago on this very topic that we're about to embark on today. So our agenda is a pretty straightforward one. We're doing the welcome now. Eric will do his presentation. He's going to have some pause and to discuss points along in his presentation, and then we'll wrap up with a broader audience Q&A, and then we'll close out on that. So I want to hand it over to Eric now and thank him so much. And the other thing I didn't say, which I'm sure he'll talk more about, is that he's been working with the Department of Energy on a lot of programs and thinking through about how best to help the country move forward on this issue. So, Eric, take it away. And that's a better slide than I had. I love that slide, that picture of solar panels. Have we lost somebody?
Sorry.
Oh, you're muted, Eric. Muted. There you go.
That's classic. Thank you, Marcia. I forgot to unmute myself. Anyway, hi, everybody. Yeah, wow, that was a nice introduction. Thank you. Yeah, so we could maybe skip over the next this slide. Kind of Marcia already kind of talked about all that stuff, but so yeah, let's stay here for a second. So I guess sort of my background, as Marcia said, I've been a community developer, but I also was an environmental science bachelor's degree back in 1991, and I've always been looking for opportunities to integrate environmental work and community development work. So finally, I've been watching those two movements kind of dance around each other for 30 years or so, and we finally just hit this moment where they're now really starting to integrate. And the embodiment of that is really in the climate bill, or the Inflation Reduction Act, which is providing $400 billion in climate funding. But really, it's even that amount is kind of an underestimate. That the best estimates are now that it might provide over $1 trillion supports for climate mitigation, because some of the programs aren't capped. They're like tax credit incentives programs, and they're turning out to be really popular. But besides the fact that there's all this money for climate, there's a lot of programs in there that have a significant community development connection. And I think it probably has to do with the fact that when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, I mean, even that summer, we had this racial reckoning happening with the murder of George Floyd, and racial equity was really getting talked about in a way that it hadn't before. And the Inflation Reduction Act was the one big piece of legislation that was going to pass, and people made, thank you to all the environmental justice advocates and community developer advocates who said, hey, this is an opportunity to promote social justice objectives and community development objectives. And a lot of those objectives were in fact built into the design of the climate programming. So there's lots of kind of linkages that we're gonna explore, both in IRA and then even in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And again, really both of those, the big high headline commitment is this Justice 40 commitment, that at least 40% of the benefits of the climate bill should go to low income and underserved communities. So let's see, we can go to the next slide for introductions. I guess I should have had a slide about kind of the three parts to this webinar that I was thinking. So before we get into your one thing you'd like to get out of the webinar, let me tell you about what I was planning. And then if we have to call an audible because somebody had a really interesting topic they really want to discuss, we'll try to do that. So the three parts I was going to talk about were, one, just sort of mission level linkages between climate mitigation and the community development, neighborhood revitalization types of objectives that you all are working on. So why do those two things go together? Like how can you promote community development objectives through climate mitigation and vice versa. Then secondly, I was going to spend some time talking about ways to actually operationalize that in programming. So if you're running neighborhood revitalization programming or home ownership programming or home repair programming, what are some ways that you can actually be promoting climate mitigation objectives? And then third, and last but not least, talk about ways to actually fund that work, which is really that's like the big news, right? Is that there's lots of money to do that stuff now. So that's what I was going to go over in the webinar. But so it would be great. We've got where people are from, but if you can chat in at this point now too, let's open up the chat again and make sure you're chatting to everybody. Can you just give me a quick hit of like one thing you'd like to make sure you walk away with, and we will do our best, including going off-road if we have to, from the slides that I've put together, assuming that I knew what you wanted. Yeah, great. How will this fit into our rehab program? There's lots of opportunities for that. Funding sources for existing rehab program. Okay, we got a bunch of those. Great. Solar panel funding. Great. And I am going to keep this, I was planning to keep this, how to make sure housing still stays affordable. Great question. Application and RFP schedule. We'll talk about that. How can nonprofits access the funding? Encouraging owners of single-family homes to implement upgrades. That's a huge challenge. Is there funding for commercial properties? The answer is yes. And I can talk a little bit about that. I focus, like as Marcia's slide kind of set up. This is great. This is good. Okay, we're going to be pretty on point, I hope. As Marcia's slide about middle neighborhoods put together, said, there's a lot of single family housing in those neighborhoods. So I had focused my slides more on single family housing, but we can go off road and talk about multifamily housing and commercial properties and community facilities as well. Okay, great. Innovative ways to make incentives more accessible. Yeah, so we can maybe talk a little bit about this driving demand question that I don't have slides on it, but it's a really huge issue. Like how do you make this a more frictionless process for people? So great. Okay, and let's dive in. I think this is pretty good. And Marcia, maybe you can help keep watching this to make sure we're on point. Okay, so we're going to start by a little bit of terminology, I guess, of like what are we talking about? Retrofitting or improving housing so that it is more climate friendly. The new term that didn't exist when I started in the field is decarbonization. So just meaning reducing the carbon pollution that is created by a home. And that's really where there's a huge focus on decarbonizing housing in the Inflation Reduction Act. And most of the climate programs have specific, there are certain entire programs that are specifically just about that. So what might a home have? If it's decarbonized, I mean, it starts with some of the basic stuff you already know about, like weatherization is one component, right? Sealing the home off from the elements, getting it well insulated, sealing gaps through which air leaks, so air sealing, that kind of stuff. Sometimes improving the windows, although often that's not usually insulation and air sealing is the higher return investment. So that's part of it. Efficiency is a part of it. So things that use less energy to do the same task. So getting energy efficient appliances and LED lighting is a part of it. And then the last bigger or newer area is electrification. So converting basically all of your HVAC equipment to heat pumps and your water heating equipment to heat pumps. And when you can, putting solar panels on the roof to generate some of the electricity that's needed to run those all electric appliances, which, by the way, that middle neighborhood stock photo home, that looked like a really great home for solar. That was like, wow. So that's sort of all the components that we're talking about doing. So if you had a home rehab, for those of you who are running home rehab programs, to the extent your rehab programs are looking at the opportunities to integrate these kinds of retrofit measures, that's sort of what we're talking about. So let's go to the next slide. This is now getting into this mission level linkages stuff. So like, why would you care about doing that stuff? If what your job is to be a community developer, and so you want to increase investment in neighborhoods and improve people's quality of life. There are a lot of mission linkages. One is energy cost savings. So another is health benefits for the building occupants. Resilience. So where you're doing all of these investments, you can also be trying to address, for example, energy resilience, so that if the house has battery storage, the owner can continue to operate dialysis equipment at home after a power outage or something like that. There's opportunities for community wealth building and small business development, and then there's opportunities for equitable workforce development. Marcia noted slides will be available after the webinar, and you're going to see a lot of links in the slides that are coming up, and you'll be able to click on them. So I'm not going to recite all the sort of facts and figures, but if you want to recite facts and figures to your board or coworkers about why they should get into this stuff, then with following any of the links I have in this slide, you will get to a plethora of said facts and figures. So Anne, let's go on to the next slide here. So on energy cost savings, one of the things that I would say here as a voiceover, there's possibilities for really deep savings. My home is now, which was an older home, it's like a 1980 home. I was able to retrofit to the point that it now produces more energy than it uses. So my utility bill is $0 every month for heating and electricity and air conditioning and hot water and all the rest of it. That's obviously a pretty 100% savings on energy use. But you can get people to deep savings even without getting all the way there. What I will say is that this can vary a lot, right? Depending upon climate, region of the home, age of the home, certain types of construction of homes will require other kinds of enabling upgrades. And you all know this, right? If you have knob and tube wiring in the home or an old electric panel, then that's going to make it hard to install a heat pump. If you might need to remove or replace a roof in order to put solar panels up, remove knob and tube wiring to be able to wire the home, that kind of stuff. But these are the broad numbers that there's pretty significant savings potential. The program that I helped to start in Vermont that did home energy improvements is saving people an average of $1,000 a year on heating costs. So significant opportunities, and this matters because energy cost burdens matter for folks. They can be as high as 8 to 10% for some households if their household budget is going just for energy costs, especially lower income. And there is a racial correlation as well, where BIPOC communities face higher energy burdens. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Another mission benefit you can realize is health and safety. I think I saw people from Baltimore am I right that we had folks from, yeah, we do. Folks from Baltimore, where the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative got its start and compiled a lot of data on the health benefits of home retrofits, which were really substantial, significant declines in asthma, as well as just abilities to reduce other hazards like just trip and fall hazards and stuff like that, by taking a comprehensive approach when you go into a home to make retrofits. You've all seen the articles around gas stoves recently. I won't get too into that, but home electrification obviously reduces sources of combustion inside your home. That it's not great to be exposed to carbon monoxide, whether we're talking about a gas furnace or a gas stove. So electrification has particularly significant health benefits. Moving on, Anne, if we can. Climate resilience, we talked about this. So, opportunities for solar and storage, particularly in energy vulnerable or last mile communities, can be really helpful, to get through a power outage. And then there's opportunities if you're thinking about, if you're intervening in a home, then what else can you do to prepare that home for flooding? Like, can you, if you're installing a heat pump, could you raise it a foot off the basement floor or something so that it's, it's going to be more resilient to a basement flooding and stuff like that. Let's see, let's keep going. In terms of mission connections, there are a lot of interesting efforts going on now where groups of neighbors are getting together, for example, to achieve discounts on going solar together or on weatherizing their homes together. And there are even groups of neighbors in some states who are getting together to own their own community solar gardens. So it's off-site solar generation that they're the owners of the project and reaping benefits from that. And then there's just specific to you folks trying to in many cases stabilize home values in certain circumstances where energy efficiency improvements are helping to improve the value of the home. And I didn't mention this but in the slide, but I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Huge small business development opportunities. I mean, there's going to be an army of contractors and small businesses needed to do these heat pump installations or put solar on people's roofs. And it's a great opportunity to help, a local business get into this field and potentially earn a lot of money. Let's see. I'm seeing a lot of cool questions coming in the chat. But let me go one more slide and we'll take a break for Q&A. So, I mean, those slides are sort of my pitch to you as community developers of like why it might make sense to promote climate mitigation measures. It's basically because you can generate all these other economic and health benefits in your own community by doing so. From the standpoint of climate mitigation policymakers, so, there's a lot of folks thinking about this right now at EPA, at the Department of Energy, and at the White House, who really don't know the work that you guys do. They're really not familiar with groups like, like NeighborWorks America or the nonprofit community development sector. But they need you, and they know they need somebody like you, and they just don't know who you are or how to find you. So the big reason why is the pace of home energy retrofits needs to increase by 25 times what it currently is. So like annually through the DOE weatherization program and the EPA Home Performance with Energy Star program, we produce only 1/25 of the number of retrofitted homes that we need to be cranking out every year to meet the nation's climate goals. And there's all this money sitting around that needs to be deployed to do that. And there's a need for people to reach out into communities and help them become aware of the possibility. And then especially the homeowners, and I mean, this extends to small landlords and any kind of building owner, but since we're talking about neighborhoods with lots of homeowners, they need a trusted advisor to navigate this process. And I won't try to sort of narrate the flow chart that is from the Rocky Mountain Institute on the right-hand side. But the point is that there's this long squiggly line where if you're a homeowner and you'd like to make your home energy efficient and save money and be safe and comfortable, you have to, first of all, know that there's even an opportunity to do that, that the gas boiler that you have from 1993 is actually a really outdated piece of equipment, and it might be making you sick, and it's costing you a lot more money than it needs to. So even the initial awareness or ideation that there is another alternative to that is sort of number one. How are you going to find out about that? Then you have to decide that you trust somebody who you trust has to come in and advise you on it, right? Like, so what are my options here? What could I do? Does my home lose energy? Like, do I have opportunities to live more comfortably? Like, I have this draft, it makes me uncomfortable, but like, is there anything I can even do about it? So who's going to help you do that? And then once you have some idea of what you want to do, how are you going to find a contractor you can trust? How are you going to line up financing? Somebody in the chat had mentioned making incentives more easy to come by, or like just the process of applying to if your state or local government has some kind of incentive, like you can get $500 rebate off the cost of insulation or something like that. Like, how am I supposed to get that money? And then, like, Marcia, you've always talked about in the design of community development programming, not being hoops are us. And unfortunately, a lot of the programs that are getting rolled out or have been rolled out over the years are hoops are us in when it comes to saving money on energy. And so you need somebody to help you navigate all of that and then make sure the installation actually went well and all that stuff, right? So huge, complicated process. You all know this stuff. If you run a home rehab program, it's like the same, right? That same kind of challenges that your customers already face, just with an energy or climate lens overlaid onto it. And therefore, you are uniquely well positioned to help people with this stuff. There's really not a lot of other groups out there who aren't community development groups who know how to engage with communities, who know how to build trust, who know how to get people excited about investing in their homes, and who think on a daily basis about how to make it easy for people to do stuff with their homes. So that's the skill set that I think this field can attract, and where I actually spend the bulk of my time talking to people at EPA and DOE and the federal government about you guys and the work you do and why you're needed. And they're always very excited to learn about it. It was great. I got a call from a huge coalition of funders that's funding climate work, and they have a goal of helping low-income communities. And their director gave me a call like a month ago and say, have you ever heard of this group, Enterprise Community Partners? it was great. Like, this woman like controls a couple $100 million grant budget. So I'm just drawing the point. Like, these folks are really excited when they hear about the work that you do for the first time. All right, so let's take a pause here. Wow, and oh my gosh, the webinar chat was just like blowing up. So I don't know how to questions or comments. We've got like 100 of them. But I am curious as well, just so the question I was gonna ask you guys was, what mission or business motivations is your organization feeling, or talking about in regards to getting involved in climate mitigation or climate resilience work? That said,
well, Eric, I noticed a couple of themes in the questions.
Awesome, thank you.
That there's several questions that have to do with doing the groundwork on building rehab that needs to happen before you can install the energy saving stuff. So to what extent will there be funding available to do all of that?
Yeah, there is some funding, various forms of funding that are available. It's unfortunately, it's been the case. So this is a huge issue, and I would argue it is the issue. And actually, I've been publishing papers on this, and actually one of my clients is the Kresge Foundation, which I know does maybe some of you all might be Kresge grantees. I know some of you are from Kresge cities. And my sort of colleague there, maybe I should find this and put this in the chat, wrote an op-ed on the Hill, like directed at all the policymakers at Department of Energy and EPA and so forth, saying, attention climate equity policymakers, it's the demand side stupid, with a big exclamation point. And it really is about, how do you make it easy for people to do this? How do you make the most frictionless experience possible that you can? maybe I should tell a story. I guess so about this Vermont program so back like 13 years ago, I was a consultant. I was working with a NeighborWorks group called NeighborWorks in Western Vermont that started a home energy rehab program called the Heat Squad, which I had a slide about later on, but we'll get to it and we'll skip that slide. That it was sort of a conversion of a regular home rehab program, the way like a lot of NeighborWorks groups have, and it was kind of turning it into a green and healthy homes program. And the first thing that they did was just like hung out a shingle saying like, hey, we'll make loans for green and healthy homes. And like the response was predictable, right? Like that didn't work. But what did work was, which we funded through a Department of Energy grant, was hiring an army of home energy advisors who would come out to your home for free to, do a blower door test and an energy assessment of your home. And they had fancy software we invested in so they could sit down at the kitchen table with you, like right then and there that very day, and say like, here's the 10 things that you can do and how much money you would save on each of those things and which one I'd start with and how much it would cost and how big a rebate you would get. And we can make you a loan for the rest and take your loan application, like all of it right there at the kitchen table. And that was combined with like a grassroots outreach kind of thing where there were like little energy committees in every town in this service area of like volunteer, like neighbors who would literally, like at times it was like phone trees, like neighbors calling neighbors, say like, hey, I had this free home energy assessment by the Heat Squad. It was really great. I'm saving a lot of money. Don't you want to do the same thing? Like, and like meetings about how to plan this stuff. And yeah, I mean, it kept building from there, but that's what it took to drive demand, was to have a really frictionless experience for the customer. When we get into the funding sources, there are, unfortunately, some of the funding sources are just sort of like capital stack, like it's making it free, like which is cool, like as you can get a really big rebate for a heat pump now. But so that certainly helps, but that DOE program doesn't also fund like you guys to go run the kind of programming I was just talking about. But there are some sources that can help pay for that. And there are, particularly to pay for energy audits, there are some of the pools of money coming out of EPA can pay for that. And there are also some EPA programs that will actually pay for community engagement work around this, and large.
Awesome.
Yeah, like there's $2 billion with a B of EPA money to do community engagement work. So big opportunities. Is there funding for workforce development? That's like the second huge area. It's like, can we get people to want this stuff? And then when they want it, are we even going to have enough contractors around and enough workforce development? In my opinion, workforce development was horribly ignored in the Inflation Reduction Act, and we are going to pay the price for that. It's going to be tough sledding. There is a small pool of money of about $200 million of federal funding that is for workforce development, specifically for home energy contractors. So there is some programming around that. And there are and I see the housing quality related barriers to weatherization. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Eileen, for putting that link in. That's a huge issue. And I appreciate you chatting that link actually. So sorry, yeah, back to workforce. It's a big issue. It's underfunded by most of the programs, and there's going to be a need for coordination. And it's actually one of the things that I'm lifting up with the funder clients I'm working with, because I think it's a gap that private philanthropy may need to fill, and just to help better coordinate the workforce system. There is, for those of you who are very interested in workforce stuff, the IREC, the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, is heading up a national clean energy workforce alliance. I'm going to put that into the chat. It's got like the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance has like 500 something members in it who are all talking about this workforce challenge, both like advocacy and sharing best practices and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to put that. I dumped that link into the chat off of my browser. Let's see here.
We'll
when you
collect all the, what about that block something group that's
block
focused?
power.
Yeah. Aren't they doing workforce related stuff? Oh, there we go. Jake just put it in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are a number of clean energy project developers who integrate workforce development into their work. So there is, I guess I would say broadly, and Black Power is one example, but there's sort of a broader burgeoning field of what I would call like mission-driven clean energy organizations. Many times they're nonprofits. Black Power is not a nonprofit. And other times they are like B Corps or socially responsible for profits. One of my favorite examples in the sort of mission-driven clean energy space um, of is Grid Alternatives, which is a solar developer, and they have a workforce program that has helped 30,000 people learn how to do rooftop solar installs. So maybe I'll chat their link to folks as well.
Oh, here's an interesting question, Eric. For the lower income communities who may be getting a discount rate on their current electric supplier or LIHEAP funding, what is the incentive to switch in terms of long and short-term benefits?
Yeah.
I'm assuming they're subsidized in some way already, so.
Yeah, well, LIHEAP would be paying somebody's electricity bills, right, and heating bills for them. So from the perspective of the household, the main incentives to switch would be comfort, safety, health, non-financial benefits, which can be really substantial. I mean, like the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, I should probably chat their link too, but they've done a really great job of tracking client outcomes, like accessing patient data from hospitals and stuff to be able to measure impacts, and just finding huge, like, for example, reductions in asthma. So that would be, from a customer perspective, that would be their main motivation. From a program administrator perspective, you're talking about being able to help way more people if they're using less energy in the first place. So it would really be desirable to help a LIHEAP client have a weatherized home, and in many cases a heat pump would save them a lot of money as well. It depends on some of the particulars. So I just chatted the Green and Healthy Homes link. I should add that LIHEAP, this is kind of maybe a little bit arcane, but LIHEAP can now be used to help those customers access community solar. So Marcia, you were talking about like folks who subscribe to community solar farms for their power, and now LIHEAP will actually can pay for that. So that's a great.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
So he's saying, like, instead, most of you probably know this, but you could get solar panels on your roof, like I have. And in Arizona, we were talking about the fact that there don't seem to be any community solar farms, whereas in New York State, there's lots of them. And so instead of putting panels on your roof, you can just buy shares in the farm. I've seen a couple of questions in here about sort of doing these retrofits, but preserving historic character of homes. So for people who are working with historic districts or historic properties, is that?
Yeah, rooftop solar might be tough, I guess.
That's why we need a farm for those.
Yeah.
Folks.
Well, I mean, the good news I would say there is that there's people better than me in terms of like being really technical nerds about like what retrofit measures matter. But every time I've talked with them, like generally I learned that like the subtle stuff that you don't see in the outside, like putting spray foam where the wood part of a historic house meets the block foundation that it's sitting at, like foaming that, which is not something that anyone would see or would impact the aesthetic qualities of the historic home, will usually save you a lot more money and energy than replacing all the windows in the same house. So you can keep your historic windows and just do a good job of fixing them up and caulking and whatever. So that's that's, I guess, the good news side of things. And then, you know, um, replacing a boiler or furnace with a heat pump shouldn't have too big an impact. I mean, you do have a unit, the condenser unit for the heat pump, you know, outside the house, and you might have a duct, you know, depending upon how uh there's duct work that could have to happen. So, you know, but generally there should be a lot you can do. Um, oh wow, Emily, man. I love this last chat. That is such a nerdy, and it's such a big question, and I love to nerd out about it. So there's with solar energy, even if you're talking about rooftop solar, from state to state, there are huge differences in policy that make certain things possible and other things a lot harder. Um, Emily, I recommend connecting with the National Community Solar Partnership and the Community Power Accelerator, where you can actually get training. I wish I'd met you earlier, because I run a training program for the Department of Energy with one of our course cohorts this fall is specifically with people who want to develop community solar in states where it's really hard to do. And we're talking about all the various ways to get around it. It would be too technical to talk about some of that, but there are different strategies that people are using. You know, with multifamily housing, there's opportunities for certain investment structures where community members can kind of own a part of a solar array and get a return. You know, they can get sort of an economic benefit, and clean electrons are being put on the grid. It just doesn't involve their specific electric account being offset. So yeah, I'll try to. I think it would get too complicated if we run into time at the end, we could spare time at the end. We could talk more about that. I love talking about it. I just don't want to bore
I
everybody.
get the impression that the more I listen to Eric, and I had the benefit of having a conversation with him before this webinar, but you know, there's like a parallel universe out there on this topic that they don't know us and we don't know them that well. And it sounds like all of these issues we're bringing up, that, you know, they have been, other people are wrestling with them.
Yeah,
So
there's these two.
for you
Yeah,
to join.
that is so true. And it's funny because this is the first year, this past year has been the first year where I felt like my consulting practice was like I've been earning money as like what I used to call derisively a Rolodex consultant. Like they pay them with consultant money and they just introduce you to people. And like this year, I spent all my time introducing people because I'm like one of this, there's not that many people who spent their careers like in these two very specific, somewhat bespoke worlds. And that, yeah, like get out there and meet people. There are amazing, wonderful people to meet in the mission driven clean energy sector. Absolutely wonderful partnerships that community developers. Bruce says, was I referring to the IRA community change grants program when I was talking about EPA paying for community engagement? Yes, Bruce, that is it. That is the one. And we're going to have a slide on that.
Okay, cool. Well, we can march on, so let's just remember, I mean, I'm getting well, no, I'm not going to say anything. Let's move forward. Okay. I know you slide on this later.
Sure. Okay, great. So that was the mission level linkages part in the slides. And of course, our conversation was about way more than just that. But if actually we started really talking about this stuff, like ways to operationalize that, like if you're running sort of community development programming, like what are some specific touch points where you could be doing like climate positive stuff in ways that could further your mission as well as a climate mission and be of interest to federal programs and funders who are doing climate stuff. So let's dive into this and into the next slide. So, you know, if you run homebuyer education and counseling programs, you know, these are just like, this is a smattering of topics that your homebuyer education program could be talking to people about. I won't read the whole slide, but basically getting people to think about like, you know, like how should I be investing in this home to make myself comfortable and safe and save energy and maybe spend less money on transportation and all that kind of stuff. And Anne was actually talking to me about Ithaca NHS actually does talk about a lot of these topics already, which was great to hear. And I know Anne and Marcia and I were all talking with Freddie Mac about how they are trying to develop to add some of this kind of content to their home buyer curricula. And there's also some very cool some very cool companies. Actually, maybe I'll put this. This is not. I'm not like marketing for them or anything, but there is this cool tech company that's come out with a website that does sort of education for homeowners about how to reduce their carbon footprint called Canopy Climate. And so I've just put their name into the chat. Like there's also like, wow, is there ever a fascinating world? The tech people, like the way that artificial intelligence is getting involved in this space and new consumer tools on the web. There's a remarkable number of players out there who would also be great people to meet if you're a community developer and partner with. And Canopy Climate is one of them for sure. If you're doing homebuyer education and counseling, I think would be interesting to look at how one could work with them. I actually just connected Canopy with eHome America to just
great.
They talk about that stuff. Yeah. Okay. So obviously, right, there's an opportunity to educate people. So let's go to the next slide. Post-purchase as well. One of the interesting projects that I was a little bit involved in, because I've done a lot of work with Inclusive, which is the National Network of Community Development Credit Unions. They've got like 500 sort of CDFI credit unions around the country. Great partners, and they have a center for resilience for climate resilience, clean energy. They've been kind of trying to move their whole network into this space. So one of the things they did was develop a tool for their network financial counselors to use, where if somebody comes in and they're talking, they know to ask. They're asking questions about all kinds of like financial issues or sensitivities, like how can we help you type of stuff. But they worked in some questions about like, hey, does your home ever feel drafty? Have you been struggling to pay utility bills? How old's your home, by the way? And it kind of funnels in and gets deeper if the few initial screening questions they have come up positive, then they know to ask more questions and possibly connect their customer to home energy improvement programs. So even just doing that and link, even if you're not doing your own rehab programming, but you have opportunities where you're interfacing with customers, to just even refer them to other programs, is an opportunity. We're going to go one deeper in the next slide, so let's hit that. Sorry, there's going to be the slide after that. Sorry. Okay, so information resources. This is just a group, like if you were talking to a homeowner or a new home buyer and you're looking for content to like work into your curricula or that you would want your counselors to review and learn about, like this slide is what they should go read. Check all this stuff out, and you will have a crazy amount of content and ideas to give people. Maybe to highlight a few things. So the first two, the EPA and DOE pages, are just like sort of generic advice to homeowners. So that would be like the low-hanging fruit. Like you're looking for a slide to work into your homebuyer webinar or something, like you could grab something out of there. The Rewiring America group, that's another great group for people to be aware of, because they're kind of promoting home electrification nationally. They have sort of a somewhat clunky beta version of these calculators, but they're working on new tech that basically anybody can log into that site. That the end vision of is that you can log in and find out exactly what rebates and incentives you can get to do what in your home based on your income and where you live, and even kind of pave the way for you to get them. So that's a really great source. Just to highlight a few other things, Solar United Neighbors is launching a national hotline, so that any like homeowner, like I need help to go solar, I have questions about this, they can actually call like a 1-800 number and talk to a real human being to get help on how to go solar, which is very cool. I mentioned Canopy Climate. Just some of the cool like data-driven tools that are out there. You can go to Sunroof and like type in your address, go check it out, and it'll like tell you, oh yeah, your roof is good for solar, and you could like get this many kilowatt hours a year, of solar energy from your roof. And then saving the coolest and wildest for last, Zero Homes is a platform where the homeowner can walk around their home with their phone camera on, and like take a video, like a live stream of their home. And Zero Homes builds a 3D model of your home, and actually comes up with recommendations for energy efficiency improvements, and like what kind of heat pump you need, and oh, that boiler looks really old, you should get rid of it, kind of advice just based on that. So some fun tools there. Okay, and then the next level, right, would be to integrate climate mitigation, clean energy, healthy home measures into your home repair and improvement programs, which I'm sure many of you are already doing. And I kind of told you the story of the Heat Squad in Western Vermont already, so I don't need to tell you that more about it, other than that it really works. I mean, we had a like a rigorous third-party evaluation done of the program a bunch of years ago that showed it made it 50% more likely that a low-income homeowner would actually go forward and get a home energy retrofit. So you can check that out. And I mean, I think that's really where, I mean, to me, this is like the heart of the matter. If you're doing middle neighborhoods work, I mean, you're trying to do something to make it easy and frictionless for people to repair and fix up and stabilize housing anyway. So integrating these kinds of issues can help people be safer, more comfortable, and improve the value of their home, as well as get funding for you that takes care of those things, right? Because right now, like what funding are you using if you need to replace an electric panel or fix a roof or something like that? And some of this climate funding will take care of those kinds of needs, as well as the clean energy itself. Let's see. Yeah, so Lene, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing, is it Lena? Sorry if I'm butchering your name. Yeah, I have focused this whole webinar on home ownership stuff. There actually are there's a lot of programming that can be done with multifamily housing, and a lot of new financial incentives. The split incentives issue. Oh, okay, first time was perfect, and now I don't remember how I said it the first time, of course. But there are, so you raise this issue of split incentives, right? Where like the landlord pays for capital improvements to an apartment building, and the tenants pay the utility bills usually, right? Like, I mean, you can have master metered buildings where that's not the case, but so that split incentives problem is a big barrier to adoption. And that sort of, I mean, certainly in middle neighborhoods, even though the intro slide said it's mostly single family homes, I'm sure there's also a lot of like mom and pop owned small rental housing. And unfortunately, like mom and pop owned small rental housing is like, well, I mean, as you all know, it's some of the hardest stock to work with in general for repair and rehab programs. And there is definitely no exception with that when it comes to energy and climate stuff. I mean, it's just really hard stock. And I mean, there's a few programs I know of who do really interesting work with mom and pop landlords, like financing energy improvements for them. More often than not, actually, this would be really interesting. I think there was somebody from Center for Community Progress signed up for this webinar. So they should meet Center for Community Progress. You guys should meet people at the Institute for Market Transformation, because all the work that you guys do, like on regulatory approaches to try to fight abandonment and stuff, they're doing on local regulatory approaches to try to ensure decarbonization of that housing, that same kind of housing stock. And so there's a national movement to improve state building codes, like state energy building codes. And there are localities, and right now it's sort of like it reads like a who's who of the political left, like New York City and Boston and stuff. But there are localities that have put into place buildings performance standards, where actually buildings are required to hit a certain level of energy performance over time, and penalties for failing to meet that, which have been used to drive energy improvements. Okay, let's see. So yeah, and I guess there's an this Deborah has an appraisal um, question, well, and a roof replacement question. So maybe I'll talk about that. So generally speaking, there's been studies coming out that saying, home energy improvements improve the value of homes. And actually, some of the earlier slides I put in, I think there's a link to some of that research there. Um, what happens when the roof needs to be replaced? So generally speaking, roofs should be evaluated before rooftop solar goes on, and the roof should be replaced before rooftop solar goes on. And then the life of the roof and the life of the solar panels will be about the same. So solar panels, if you get them from a good company, are warranted for 25 years. They can produce energy for 40 years or something with not too much degradation. But that's close. That's kind of similar to the life of your roof. So I would try to time the two things. And there is some ability, again, some of the funding sources that we are going to talk about will fund what are called enabling upgrades for solar, which could include roof repairs to allow like a low-income family to get solar.
I like that phraseology. We should all remember that for our grant
Enabling upgrades.
proposals.
Yeah. Right. We are the enabling upgrades people. If you're like home repair folks, yeah. Why Ellison talks about scams? That's such a great question. This is going to be a huge, again, it's like there's so many issues in this clean energy space that just feel like a replay of stuff we've been through in the community development field. I mean, the subprime, there is like a whole brewing like subprime lending crisis, with solar scams and home energy scams. Absolutely. And I think that's a very important area to talk about with homebuyer education. I just had somebody talking to me from Puerto Rico who was offered the chance to lease solar panels on their roof. Like, we'll give you solar panels and batteries. And actually, he lives in a middle neighborhood in San Juan. And the offer was, hey, we'll give you solar and storage. All you have to do is pay us a lease of $370 a month for the next 25 years fixed, which is, it's like adds up to well over $100,000 that this person was going to pay for a $20,000 solar and storage array. Just crazy stuff. So there's again, real needs for like the kinds of organizations who are on this call to get involved in this space. Because you all plus the mission-driven clean energy folks are sort of the white hats in this, and there's a big solar industry that sometimes it's doing great work and doing good stuff, but there are definitely bad actors. So it's a real issue, and it will set the entire climate movement back if they're allowed to keep doing their stuff, right? So actually, I saw Robert McCool from who I knew from Fifth Avenue Committee in Brooklyn on the participants here, and hey Robert. Hope you're doing well. But so, we had talked about this, that when his organization ran a program to help homeowners go solar and had problems with the outreach part where, if you go talk to a homeowner and they'd be like, oh, solar, you have to be really careful about that, because what they knew about was the scams. They hadn't heard positive stories, about solar installations really helping them. Okay, so where are we? Wow, we really burned it through. We need to get to the funding. We need to get to the money.
Yeah.
All right.
Keep going.
Yeah. So neighborhood revitalization programs. There's some cool opportunities to integrate, green stuff. My favorite example, I don't know if there were folks from Philadelphia, but I loved the New Kensington CDC. They were a NeighborWorks group. They had a neighborhood revitalization initiative called Sustainable 19125 that basically sought to revitalize their neighborhood by making it the environmentally coolest neighborhood in Philadelphia. There's a link to a case study that I wrote about that project, which is old at this point. It's like at least 10 years old, but it didn't seem any less relevant to me. In fact, if anything, more relevant, where you could be adding more like buildings decarbonization and solar stuff than what they had been doing. So just a resource there to think about.
I just wanted to call out the part about the green guides. Can you talk about that more? Because first of all, I really like it. It's dawning on me that this is the time for our organizations to be positioning themselves and developing capacity to be like the major, maybe a version of the Rolodex consultant, but to homeowners,
locally
right?
in the neighborhood.
Yeah, in the neighborhood. And
Yeah,
Green
yeah.
Guides in this case, talk about what they did.
Yeah, so they were like block captains who, and I hope I'm not, if there was anybody who happens to be from New Kensington CDC, you should unmute yourself and just jump in rather than have me try to represent and tell your story for you. But they were like, as I understand it, block captains who like got to know all their neighbors and would just they first and foremost built social capital with their neighbors, just the way any good neighborhood revitalization program should do. So it was like fun meeting people, festivals, whatever, block parties. And then they would help homeowners with like, hey, you need a recycling bin? I've got it. Like, oh, hey, here's a free composting bin for you. Here's a free, CFL light bulb. They were CFLs at the time. Right now it would be LEDs. Or, would you like to come to our community gardening workshop and stuff like that? So you could imagine a green guy doing the same thing, but helping people to, hey, does your home feel drafty? You could get this free home energy assessment. Like we could have somebody come by. And there's a huge need for that kind of like boots on the ground, like genuine community engagement stuff. Where again, you guys are sort of the organization that all these climate policymakers are searching for and don't know about. Who they tend to know about are like EJ advocacy groups, environmental justice advocacy groups, who are doing great work, but actually aren't as community connected in the same way that you guys are, like in terms of like really knowing people who live on your block type level. Like they know they find advocates to get together and make noise about needing to change a certain policy, but when it comes to convincing lots of people that a heat pump could be just what they need, like that's not, that kind of work is not stuff they do, like or just engaging people in grassroots level like let's help everybody go solar together. We could like actually the program that Robert was working on, like helped groups of homeowners get together and they would all go solar together to get a discount on the pricing, and as well as select the contractor together. It made them easier for them to do, and that required boots on the ground to do it. And so you guys know how to operate that kind of programming, and now there's funding for it through the EPA Community Change Grant as well. So okay, so let's maybe move on from there, Anne, if we can. Let's see. So I mean, I think we're just getting lots of questions just coming right on. I feel like I ought to move into the funding, straight into
I
the
agree.
funding.
Yeah, I think we're just answering questions as we go along. So
Yeah, but so keep them coming. So funding resources. Okay, so there are a lot of funding resources. I could talk about a lot more money than what we're talking about, but let's just say there's more money. Every webinar you've ever been to over your entire career, talking about like CDBG this, home that, new HUD program for this, new community development program for that, add up all of that funding, multiply it by 5, and I'm talking to you about more money here than you've ever heard of. Like literally over $1 trillion of investment is gonna flow. And so if there's too much to talk about, and I'm just gonna pick some highlights that are like, I think most relevant to the kind of programming you're running. So I will start with the DOE rebate programs for home energy improvements, which is about $9 billion of funding. So right there, we're only one program in and we already have eclipsed like combined like home and CDBG funding for the nation. This is going to run through state energy offices who are in the process of making their plans now. It's available for both single family and multifamily housing. And I've given you this program page so that you can kind of keep track on where the program is. If you go to the next slide, I'll tell you just a little bit about how it works. That's the one. So of course, it's a government program. So, one of the roles that your organization can definitely play is just helping to simplify this. Like, what was somebody said at the very beginning of the webinar, simplified incentives. And I was like, yeah, I sure wish. But trying to hold people's hand through getting these kinds of rebates is, I think, gonna be a key need here. So there are 2 different rebate programs. On the left-hand side, we basically have a rebate program that pays you by the measure. So if you install a heat pump, you can get up to $8,000 for a heat pump. Um, it's capped at $8,000. If you're low income household, at under 80% of AMI, it'll pay you 100% of the heat pump costs up to $8,000. If you're a middle income household, 80 to 150% of AMI, this is nice, right? You guys are used to programs that cut off at 80. These go beyond 80. You can get half the cost of your heat pump paid for. Again, up to the same cap of $8,000. But so for my heat pump that I use in my home actually only cost me $3,000. So for a lot of homeowners, you could be looking at like a free, like heat pumps are free, under certain conditions. And there are a bunch of other measures, like you can upgrade your electrical service, you can get a heat pump water heater. And then there is a fee that that DOE will pay aggregator entities that kind of like help sign people up for the programs. So that's in that second to last bullet point. Again, Rewiring America, which is really one of the entities that pushed for the legislation to go through and is going to be working on implementation, has a really nice website where you can find out more information. The right-hand rebate program, Homes, like you basically have an energy audit, and if you and it's more flexible, but you get an incentive if your package of home energy improvements saves your home at least 35% of the energy that it was using. And that can be either an estimate or like there's also, you can measure actual energy usage. But I think the estimate version is a lot more easy to use. So you can get low income folks up to $8,000 per unit. All incomes, no income limit at all, can get half of project cost paid for up to $4,000. So let's keep going to just keep talking about more money. And again, you'll have these slides. You'll be able to click on the links. There's of course there's a ton of fine print, right? So you got to click on the link and learn and read about the program. And the program web pages are all really good in terms of letting you know how the money is going to flow, when it's going to become available, all that kind of stuff. The rebates are mostly going to start coming available like in January. All right. On top of all those rebates, homeowners can also take a tax credit. So this is in addition to everything that we just talked about. When they file their taxes, they can also get basically up to $3,200 per year. And they can do it again and again every year. Like if you space out your project over 3 years, you could get the $3,200 tax credit 3 times. So there's up to $2,000 for heat pumps, and then up to $1,200 in any given year for other energy improvements. So the smart money would be on actually making a plan with the homeowner to do some improvements one year and some improvements the next year to kind of maximize their tax credits. Again, so they never make it easy, right? And it's like doing it. Even the rebate programs feels like doing your taxes to figure out like what rebate you can qualify for. And this is literally doing your taxes. So it's like people need hand-holding for it. Again, there are some very, very, very interesting tech platforms that people are developing to try to make all of this much easier, to like just type in, tell us about your project, tell us about you, and it will just spit back out at you exactly what your plan should be and that kind of stuff. All still kind of under development, but I expect a lot of it to launch in the next year. Okay, moving on. This is the solar tax credit for rooftops. So it's been restored to 30%, and it goes through 2034. So again, like if you install a $10,000 rooftop solar system, then you'll get a check from the government for $3,000. So it's really easy. The one problem with it, which is significant from a social justice standpoint, is that you have to owe that much tax. So in middle neighborhoods, if you're working with some homeowners who are lower income, this is a non-refundable credit. They might not be able to use this incentive. It's kind of regressive, which is really annoying. And there was a big push to try to make it refundable, and it failed. So for low-income folks, depending on the state that you are in, there are options to work around this, and this gets complicated. But there's solar leasing, there's solar power purchase programs that you could do. Actually, the organization that Robert was working with in New York City we're working with them now to do exactly this kind of program so that low-income homeowners can get access to tax credits. And then you can also have community solar programs like what Marcia was talking about, where like you subscribe to community solar farm, and the solar farm is what's getting all the tax credits, and it's just passing them along to you. These kinds of programs which are basically, those are commercial projects, not residential projects. And there's a whole other section of the solar tax credit that I just mentioned very briefly here, section 48, that funds those kinds of programs. It doesn't work the same way as this 30% rooftop residential tax credit. I won't get into the details, but it's actually a really, really big program where the tax credits are very deep. I'll just say this as a teaser, because some of you might be involved in multifamily affordable housing, and then you're going to want to email me and be like, wait a second. If you are developing affordable multifamily housing or refinancing affordable multifamily housing, and you're using low-income housing tax credits, LIHTCs, and you also get the Section 48 tax credit, solar can be free. You can install solar at $0 cost to you. So that's how deep the Section 48 tax credits can run when you combine them with the LIHTCs, recent changes in LIHTC. So there's a whole other world, and I'm just giving you the tiny little teaser because we're talking about middle neighborhoods, and this isn't a low income solar webinar, but there's a ton going on, and that's where a lot of that $1 trillion that I was talking about is going to come from, those commercial renewable energy tax credits. Okay, moving on. EPA community change grant. So Bruce, this is the thing that you had found, and that this link in the last bullet is the same link that you put in the chat. So it's $2 billion of funding and you have to be a community-based organization. It's either partnerships of community-based organizations or partnerships of community-based organizations with local governments or universities. That's who has to apply. But so CBOs have to be involved in this process. It's the one set of funding that's just absolutely tailor-made, for like community-based groups doing middle neighborhoods type of work. And they're very flexible, as you can see. So you could run an entire home rehab program, clean energy home program with this. You could plant lots of street trees. You could do climate resiliency work where you build rain gardens in your neighborhood. And you can just do facilitating engagement of disadvantaged communities. So, doing planning charrettes and stuff like that. So the main barrier, I would think, to using this program would be whether your neighborhood itself fits into where they are going heavy duty social justice and environmental justice with this. And so depending upon your particular neighborhood, it might or might not show up in their screening tools as the kind of place they want to fund. But other than that,
neighborhoods have at least Black groups within them that are much lower income. What I mean? So
I would think that there's
still not evenly distributed. I'm sure most middle neighborhoods could have parts of their neighborhood that, if not all of them.
Yeah, that's the main question. I can't sort of answer real time, but that would be like the thing I would look into first. If you were getting excited about this, that would be the first thing I would check so that you don't waste more time. But I agree that I would hope that you're going to find opportunities for it. So that's a really cool program. Next slide. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is a really big program, also really cool. $27 billion. The short of it is that almost all of this money is going to flow through community-based lenders. So CDFI loan funds, community development credit unions. To some degree, it may flow through some community development banks, and then green banks. Like that's who's going to have this money and be deploying it. The only exception is the Solar for All Fund up top, which some of you, I know many of you are in local governments. Local governments and state governments can apply for and receive that money, which is basically to run low-income solar programs. The middle program, the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator Fund, like all of that is going to just flow out like It'd be like $5 million grants, $10 million grants to like a loan fund. So I think I saw somebody from Village Capital, CDFI in Cleveland on our participant list. And like, that would be an example. Like Village Capital, y'all could get a $10 million grant. Indirectly, you won't apply directly to EPA for it, but indirectly through, let's say, Opportunity Finance Network or Inclusive or the Justice Climate Fund or any one of many applicants who are right now preparing applications, me included, helping them for, like the people are writing like $1 billion, $2 billion grant proposals to EPA to then give the money back out to all these community-based lenders. So that's probably the coolest one. And that the uses of that money are, it's like buildings decarbonization, like helping homes and buildings get towards zero net energy is literally what they mean. Solar and storage, like rooftop solar or community solar. And then clean transportation. Actually, doesn't have to be just EVs. It can be broader than that, like clean transportation finance for those communities, all low income focused. And then there's lastly, just a couple of very large national clean investment funds that will be started. That will also, that's sort of a little bit more high finance, but ultimately at the end of the day, they are going to be doing things like helping affordable housing to go carbon free and stuff like that. I mean, some of the applications are actually centered around that. Okay, let's see. Let's keep going to see. Wow, there's so much. There are technical assistance centers in every region of the country that EPA has set up that can help you understand these opportunities. So get to know your technical assistance center locally, which will just be starting up now as we speak. So they're probably going to be a little disorganized for the first few months, but they are potential allies and they will help with stuff like community engagement. And they will help with stuff like understanding funding sources. That's what they're there to do, is to help community-based organizations understand all this stuff that I'm talking to you about. So, worth trying them out. There's yet another $5 billion program called the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants. And this is starting by funding plans, including for metropolitan areas and states, about how they're going to reduce climate pollution. And then those turn into competitive grants for the implementation of those plans. And so those of you who are with the city government, you should try to participate in those planning processes and know that when the $5 billion of implementation money comes available, you can apply. If you're in a municipality that's covered by one of those plans, you can actually apply independently, like as a city, and say like, hey, we want money to do this part of the plan. And it is very, very flexible money as long as you're doing something that's aligned with what the plan is talking about. So this is a big opportunity to like get involved in these planning processes, right? People are making climate action plans, and from climate action plans that have been done before this EPA program ran out, you would be surprised how often they talk about issues like improving housing stock, housing affordability, transport. I mean, issues that are bread and butter issues for the communities you work with. Let's keep moving. This is just a smattering of additional funding, mostly from the infrastructure bill. There was $1 billion in street tree grants that were announced just like a week or two ago. So maybe some of you got some of those. Programs to reconnect communities that have been cut off by superhighways, climate resilience money, green infrastructure money that coming through the EPA Clean Water Revolving Fund, $13 billion fund. You could use it to build rain gardens in your neighborhoods. EV charging infrastructure. I mean, the list goes on. Let's just keep moving on because I know we're really short on time. Yeah, so suggested next steps for you. Yeah, learn about your state climate action planning processes. There's one going on where you are. Get to know your state energy office because they're going to be administering that $9 billion of rebate programs. Talk to your own staff, right? Or staff at partner organizations who do home rehab, home ownership stuff. Go click on the links I gave you, track these programs. You can learn about when the deadlines are coming up. EPA Communities Change is coming out this fall. Get to know the tic-tac. So all of that stuff is good stuff to get to think about. And as you're collecting data for your own neighborhood revitalization plans, think about what can you learn about home energy use needs and utility usage in your neighborhood. So those would be big next steps. I think we only have a few. Yeah, these are just resource slides for you, so I'm not going to go deep into them. Let's move on. Let's only like two of them, so let's look at each of them. One is I talked about how state regulatory environments are a really big deal in terms of determining what you can and can't do with solar, and even impacts what you can and can't do with energy efficiency. And these two websites will really help you. The Community Power Scorecard just gives you a quick overview of like, hey, where's my state good and where's my state not good. And the Desire website up top is an exhaustive list of like every kind of energy efficiency and solar program, regulatory incentive, state run grant program in your state around solar and energy efficiency. So that's really worth looking at. And then on energy audits, for home energy audits, if you're not already connected with the Building Performance Institute with ResNet, those are the two main training and certification sources. I think that's all I was going to put in. I mean, there's a lot more. Yeah, come take the course at the NeighborWorks Institute, and you'll get a much longer list. Oh, we do trainings. That's right. We are. Yeah, go back to the slide.
Go back.
Yeah, so at UNH we have trainings in solar lending and in community solar development. So you can check out that link. And we have an upcoming course. It is going to be called Home Energy Improvements, Driving Demand and Deploying Dollars. We are just starting to build it now, but it'll probably come out in the spring. So that will be
Eric, be sure and let us know. I personally would like to take that, and we can post it on our network, in our Google group. If any of you aren't in our Google group, let's see, email Marcia at middleneighborhoods.org, and we'll make sure that you are. So, wow, that's amazing. Can we go back, Anne, to the slide about next steps for the organizations? There. So, I feel like this is a super important slide. So I don't know about the rest of you, and please type into the chat if you have any thoughts about this. But if you, I feel like there's a lot of websites that you need to start following, right? That probably you need to decide as an organization, the extent to which you want to move forward in aggressively exploring like the feasibility of expanding a program or creating an arm or a line of business or augmenting an existing line of business in your organization. I feel like, as Eric said, a lot of these programs are going to roll out over the next few months. Now's the time for us to know what we want to do so that we can go apply for the money that's going to meet our needs. And knowing what the shopping list is in terms of the housing conditions and needs in the community that you serve, I think is really big. I was curious, Eric, please, everybody, if you want to have more questions, type them in. Do you think that there will be any effort on state programs that typically provide capital? I guess we're mostly talking about CDBG, but who have the capacity to, allocate capital that might be matching grants with some of these programs that might fill some of those gaps about the updates that need to happen before? Or,
yeah.
Is our best bet to clobber the actual energy programs to do a better job of that? Or is our best bet to try and go after other capital sources and say, hey, we could leverage so much more if you would help us cover this gap?
Yeah, for those folks who are on the call who are in like a policy type of position, I think what Marcia just talked about is a really huge issue where we have to achieve like better integration at the program level so that there's more seamless funding for like folks who are more on the ground, where like, okay, I can try to use the greenhouse gas reduction fund for this and the DOE rebates for that, but I still got the lead paint to deal with. And none of these programs that Eric just talked about are helping me with the lead paint abatement. And so now I have to go to CDBG, and it's tough. It's going to be really, really hard. And I think it's unfortunate that it's going to be a lot of heavy duty program navigation. I do think that the local and state climate pollution reduction planning processes could be one way of trying to, think that through. Like, I mean, there's going to have to be community engagement around it, right? Like park, how do you say, stakeholder partnerships, like collective impact models, or something where organizations are working together and we're trying to break through some of the silos where like one part of the state is administering CDBG, or the one part of the city is administering CDBG and the other is dealing with the state energy office. That there's going to be a lot of challenges like that can only be overcome through communication at this point, because none of the federal regs, I mean, all of the funding applications are asking people, what are you doing to coordinate and break down silos? But, pushing all the responsibility on people at the ground level rather than EPA or HUD or DOE taking responsibility for it. If I may take that pot shot at them, I mean, there are a lot of good people there, but it's a real challenge. We had an event at the university. We did an event at the New York Fed this summer talking about healthcare sector funding, which seems like just a huge opportunity for integration to me. So if any of you are kind of tilting at the windmill of trying to get healthcare sector players to invest in your housing work, which I hope you are, since there are plenty of housing related social determinants of health, that's felt to me like, okay, now we've got these billions and billions of federal climate money that we can put into housing, like green and healthy home programs. Like, isn't this time for the health sector? Because that's first lost money, right? That's money that's protecting their investment if they would put in some money as well. So we had a whole conference trying to explore that, and I hope other people will join me. It's definitely tilting at a windmill, but I feel like it's a big
Fascinating.
yeah.
Well, I guess so. It sounds like the ship has sailed on what the federal regs are actually saying.
Pretty much.
And yeah, so maybe it's more practical at this point to figure out what your needs are, what the federal programs are, where the gaps are, and engage all the stakeholders that can try and fill those gaps for you.
Yeah.
Here it is, 10:30. We actually toyed with the idea of could we do this in an hour instead of an hour and a half, which is silly. So Anne, go ahead and bring up our closing out slides, but I just want to let everybody know that we want to do follow-up webinars on the topic, because if anyone who's been here for this hour and a half knows it's huge. We'd like to, for one thing, do a follow-up webinar with some practitioners who, they're not using this money yet because this money isn't available necessarily, but they have done a great job at creating, some of the organizations that Eric talked about here. So what do their green and healthy homes programs look like? What, they could still be things that you could aspire to or start to figure out how to use as a sort of vehicle through which you could channel this money, because they have all the bells and whistles around community engagement already. They sounds like they've really figured that piece out, and what works and doesn't work in terms of engaging, actually getting homeowners to make these investments. So I think there's a lot we can learn there, but you will see an evaluation after this Zoom. And one of the main question we care about is what else would you like to see on the topic? Okay, so let us know other details about that. I guess we need to close out. Just to let you know, we're having our next webinar on October 10th is going to be supporting DIY home improvements. This is a huge area of work that sometimes happens badly in middle neighborhoods, and we are going to have some practitioners talking about how to make it way better. And then we have another engagement chat that Anne leads on October 18th, which is about finding leaders in your community, or we have a couple of topics we tee up or using AI to engage with them. I don't even know what that means. Always check out our partner Center for Community Progress. They have a great webinar series themselves that you can find on their website. And please join I think that's our next slide, our community of practice. You can go to our website, which we're migrating, so I hope it still works, middleneighborhoods.org. The bottom of any page, you can sign up for that. that way you'll be on our mailing list and everything else. We will do a follow-up. Oh, Priscilla, how do we sign up for these webinars? Yeah, go to, well, let's make sure you're in our community practice and you will get direct mail on that stuff. Okay. Eric, I can't thank you enough. It's always a delight to let you nerd out, as you would put it, on a topic that you really love. Because the other thing I've heard Eric self-describe is that he's someone who has a lot of, or maybe he said he's a nerd that has some social skills. Is that what you say about yourself, Eric?
Just
So
just amount of social skills, but yeah.
yeah. So he is a great intermediary, I think, between a lot of very technical, complicated fields and the rest of us in community development. And so grateful that you're helping us navigate through this. So have a great rest of your week, everybody. And let's all, oh yeah, Nancy, this is our new website, ncst.org/middle-neighborhoods. So if you can't find us at middleneighborhoods.org, which we hope is going to kick you over to this site, that's another place to find us. We're in the middle of migrating. So everybody, thanks for participating so much. And I look forward to hearing all your stories about how you're getting ready to implement these programs. Thank you again, Eric.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.